Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. And if you haven't already, follow us on social media for tips, tutorials, giveaways, and daily inspiration.
All right, hello and welcome everybody to the WellnessPlus podcast. This is your guest host Ryan speaking. Today I have Dr. Scott Jurica here with me. Welcome, Dr. Scott.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, man. It's good to have you. We were kind of talking before. Tanisha is, I guess, who recommended you to us. So that's always cool. Tanisha always has, I feel like, so many connections in the health world.
She knows everybody.
Yeah,
I mean, like everybody. Anywhere that I go, like, you know Tanisha, and somebody's going to know her. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, she's an awesome lady, and she's got all kinds of crazy knowledge on, I feel like, so many things.
Lots of fun stuff. Yeah, well, there's a lot of parallels to, to our practices.
Yeah.
And, I mean, especially as you get into this world, as you interview a lot of different, holistic, healthcare providers and whatnot, that you just start to, as we're going to talk about, today with the different diets and whatnot, there's so many different angles, and you start to have an interest in certain things and a lot of those aspects that Tanisha and I, so through the years, just talking back and forth with different cases or referring different patients back and forth, and so yeah, she's good. She knows her stuff. Yeah,
it's awesome. And yeah, kind of like you were saying, we were talking about bringing you on and kind of discussing all the different diets that seem to be so popular right now, and so many different people are so, like, I don't know, they're so heavily invested in their diet, I feel like, and everyone says one is the best or one's, better than the other for whatever reason. And I just, for me, and I feel like a lot of people, it's hard to know what do I eat? You know what I mean?
Understood.
So I just thought that would be kind of cool. Before we get into that, could we get a little bit of kind of background on you, how you got into the holistic care world and everything?
Sure. I grew up as a fat kid, made fun of all those fun, horrible things growing up that you didn't like. And through that, I actually got really interested, in nutrition. My cousin, who's another holistic doctor out in Odessa, Dr. Logan Cox, he's, I'm biased. I think he's one of the best doctors anywhere. And so I got to see a lot of really great stuff as I was growing up, to see what I thought was a true, doctor, and there's different ways, and I have medical doctors, chiropractors, dentists in the family, all of these different kind of doctors, and that just gravitated towards me. The way I wanted to practice was, I initially was going in pre-med, and I decided I didn't like blood, so that wasn't going to work out too well with a lot of things, and I just realized in my life, my own personal reason, and I think there's a time and place for almost every doctor. It's I'm not anti-drug and pro-health, and so when I decided to get into this work, it just felt important to me that whenever I were to see a patient, hypothetically you, and I wanted to do everything I could possibly do naturally before they possibly needed drugs or surgery, things like that. So knowing that I would go into an operating room or to different ways of non-natural ways, I just didn't feel comfortable knowing that I didn't do my part first. So then it's like, okay, let's get them ready, and then again, if you do need surgery, if you do need whatever, you're going to be healthier, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be better to be able to heal faster, and then be able to recuperate after that. And then what can we do afterwards to see if we can prevent you from that happening again. So that was my philosophy from the beginning, as far as how I got and everything.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at that, especially not necessarily being like anti-drug like you're saying, but just pro-health, and more so having that good foundation of your health.
Absolutely.
Before you have to start seeking out some of those other options, I guess, that are in medicine. Because obviously medical technology and everything has done a great deal of good. Like, it's not all bad. But I think it's definitely cool to have kind of the holistic approach, and still focusing on not just, I guess, treating symptoms as opposed to actually finding a lot of these root causes. Which is always really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were saying, so you lived in Manhattan for
almost 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
How was that?
Loved it. Had a practice right in Midtown. Energy of the place, the people, I can't say enough good stuff about it. Crazy intense.
Yeah.
Talk about, there's not a person I didn't work on that didn't have adrenal.
Right. That's what I would imagine. I just feel like living in the city, you're stressed.
It was like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
It really was. And you just get used to it. it's just how it is. And it's kind of what you expect to be in there. But I think my original apartment wasn't much bigger than this room. I mean, it's, you live tight, but just phenomenal experience, phenomenal people. I still do a lot of virtual consults with a lot of my patients from back there,
cool.
as well. So I loved it.
That's crazy. Yeah. The size difference is so serious between, especially Texas and New York City.
Oh, and then you start talking with people that, how much do you pay in rent? How much do this stuff? And it's like, you're paying for how much? You can, you go out to Texas, you can have a whole, ranch if you want to, for the price you pay for a room. But it's what you do. It's what and through that, the experiences. And I grew up here, and I practice in Manhattan. I went to school in Connecticut. You learn so much about people in that kind of environment when there's almost 9 million people that live on an island, that when you start seeing patients, I mean, from every possible facet of things that are going on, I learned volumes, treating people there. So I had a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And then, and you said you're from Austin then.
Yeah.
You grew up
I was technically born here, grew up outside of Corpus.
Oh, okay, nice.
In Portland. And so
nice.
Went to school here, did all my undergraduate, and then once I decided to go to chiropractic school and get my master's in nutrition. I was kind of a typical thing, wanted to get out of Texas, been here my whole life, wanted to experience, and so I did that. And then made a full circle, and had a child up there, and my wife and son and I are now back here.
That's awesome.
In Austin.
That's awesome. So kind of like we were saying, getting into the whole diet thing. Right now, I feel like the big ones are keto is huge. And paleo was huge. I feel like it's fallen off a little bit. I feel like it almost like the paleo people turned into keto people.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Yep.
And then of course there's vegetarian, vegan. The Mediterranean diet is always very popular. And lately we actually just had a guy on that's carnivore diet, which that was pretty interesting.
Yep.
What I don't know. How do you even get started in this whole diet?
So we only have an hour, right?
We got one.
So, as one of my mentors, one of my big things I do in my practice is apply kinesiology, and Dr. George Goodhart always said that the body's simply intricate and intricate simple. And it's one of the ways that I start with patients that as humans we can ruin almost anything, right? You can say something is, Doritos and Diet Coke is vegan, right? I mean, that doesn't mean it's healthy, and nor is a bunch of nitrate-filled bacon is Atkins or low carb. That you've got to look at the entire concept and not be so dogmatic. And I think thankfully for the paleo movement, the keto movement, I think it's been phenomenal in so many ways because a lot of the fear of fat has gone away. Not fully. There's still it's because of Dr. Google also. People come in. Just with like I was saying with Manhattan, I can't even tell you what people come in and say, so I heard or so I researched and what about this? And when you want to kind of try to simplify all this is everybody wants the same goal, right? We want to live healthy, we want to not be in pain, we don't want to get Alzheimer's, we don't get a cancer, we don't want to that's the ultimate goal. And so then the question is, well, how in the world do we get there? And so the basis that I start, like with the keto versus paleo versus vegetarian versus whatever, as I first tell patients is we know one certainty, and it's like the what I call the carbohydrates, right? The processed foods, all those kind of things. That's the stuff we know. Okay, we got an idea that's it. So what else can we kind of start with on those levels? And so then when we look into, I'm a big functionally minded person. So looking at labs, looking at their stressors, looking at, philosophies, I have, getting into religion and, Jewish patients or Muslim or whatever. There's going to be certain aspects of that, right? So you kind of look at all these things. And so when you look at, again, all these different foods, you really trace back to one of my favorite doctors, Melvin Page. And you look into the International Foundation for Nutrition Health, West Denny Price Foundation, these kind of organizations that are nonprofit, that aren't trying to necessarily sell a book or sell a product or whatnot, to say, let's kind of understand our genetics. Let's understand where we are is, nutritionally, based, and look at, are you Scandinavian? Are you Hungarian? Are you, and so I have some of my patients were Greek, in New York. That makes it really easy when you can follow more of a Mediterranean, where genetically that's just, I'm not going to tell them you need to have a carnivorous diet or eat a lot of beef, because you probably might not do as well. So the first aspect when I talk with patients is a dialogue, is really kind of understanding, like, what are your health goals? What is it that you're wanting to do? And it's a lot more than just, I want to lose weight. I want to get into the dress before the wedding. I want to whatever. That the ultimate goal is really understand where are you long term. What do you want to do for? Do you want to have kids? Do you want to watch your kids grow up? Do you want to, not be in hospice care? And not that this is guaranteeing any diet's going to say you're never going to get these diseases, but it's maximizing these aspects. And so, with all the different diets, I mean, with like I said, from the keto and the paleo, I mean, a lot of these go back into, the research even in the 60s with, epilepsy and ketogenic, diets and stuff like that. And so when you first look at everything, you want to look at their stressors. You want to look at the aspects of what how they're digesting, how they're absorbing, all those kind of things. That's the first aspect. And when you look into another key component I look at is a 200-year rule. If it's been around 200 years, let's kind of consider as a possibility. I'm not going to say that all wheat is bad. I'm not going to say that all meat is good. It's here I'm probably going around these different circles on the different conversations about different diets, because the one problem is people inherently, not to say if it's even what they're meaning to, is they get to be too dogmatic. Like, oh, I can have this ketogenic, ice cream, right? And I can have 3 containers of it because ketogenic only had 5 grams of carbs. But what about your fiber? What about this? What about And so that's where the big conversation kind of comes into. When I talk with patients about, when I look at, they're not sleeping well, they can't lose weight, they, crave salt and sugar, they're, hate their job, whatever it is, they would kind of go through and say, okay, let's base on this, what's going to work for you right now, and what you, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, right? I have an idea for a patient that says, I really think you're going to be benefiting. And a lot of it could look very, paleo, and very keto, and especially paleo because there's a lot of food sensitivities that people have that by default paleo just takes out, which is awesome. But I try not to put it as a definition of, oh, I think you should be on a paleo diet, right? Because then, again, like I said, oh, can I go have this paleo, ice cream? That's like, let's kind of look at what your body needs, and let's kind of assemble to say, okay, we know these foods you can't pronounce. And Michael Pollan is one of my favorite authors, and he talks about these kind of things, about shopping the perimeter of the grocery store, doing all those kind of things. Like, let's try to simplify and say, let's just kind of eat, as crazy as it may sound, eat real food. Yeah. Right? Start with these kind of components and educating patients on really, what is food, what is nutrition. Start to understand what our bodies need in this we're too cerebral in the aspect that we would like, let's track our every possible thing versus, wait a second, why is it that I'm really craving meat? Or, what, I can't stand the look of meat. Sometimes that could be, there's a digestive issue. There's, there's other things going on as far as, I'm needing, you get a blood test and you're craving meat because you have low iron. It's those kind of components, because it gets to be, if you get to be too dogmatic with stuff, then I don't think, while there can be benefits with saying, I just want to follow this, the long-term goal, just what I've seen over the past, close to 15 years in practice, that it's not sustainable. That when you want to get an aspect of, doctor is Latin for teachers. So it's like, I want to educate these patients and say, okay, what is it? What are your goals? What is it that you need? And why? I heard about this great, 1 meal a day, to intermittent fasting, to all these different components, and all of these could very well have a place in their diet. But to really kind of first to initially figure out the whys and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's something that a lot of the people we've had on the show kind of talk about a lot is you're talking about, figuring out what your body needs. So that the thing with a lot of these diets seems to be they're very, like you said, dogmatic, and they're very kind of generalized so that it's just like you just go and follow that one set of rules. No matter what.
Follow this.
Yeah, it becomes religious for a lot of people. It becomes religious, or it's like similar to like political beliefs. It's like all these things where people get wrapped up into these parties or into these religions or into these diets, and it's like
that is a good analogy. It can become even of a religious aspect, and definitely nothing against religion by any means, but it's that aspect of when we can look at what we need versus I need this because everybody says it's great, and it's why is it that you can have your best friend go on whatever diet, feel amazing, do wonderful, lose 20 pounds, you try the same thing and feel like crap.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for you.
Really good examples would be something like somebody who wants to follow a ketogenic diet, but what if they have a sluggish gallbladder or don't have a gallbladder, and they might not even realize that. I had a patient recently who was going through some gut stuff, and you go through all the health questionnaires and whatnot, and as we went through it, and I don't even remember when, but it was a discussion on some stuff, and I asked something about a gallbladder or something. He goes, "Oh no, I had my gallbladder removed 15 years ago." It's like, and flipping through all the, I was like, "You didn't tell me that." He goes, "Well, I forgot. I just didn't remember."
Didn't think it. Yeah.
And so it's those kind of things that again, as you're looking long term, for your health and looking at these different diets, what could be pluses and negatives with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would the lack of a gallbladder affect? Like, why is that bad for someone going on a specific diet?
Well, and this gets that's a whole other argument in itself. You'll hear certain doctors say you don't even need a gallbladder. Like it's whatever. Other ones will say it's vital. So I'm just going to try to go with as much as just physiology as far as what I've seen and what I look at labs and whatnot. The gallbladder stores something called bile that's made by the liver. And so as you eat, your liver makes some bile to help digest and break down, utilize the fat. It's like emulsification. It's kind of like when you wash your clothes and you use the soap, right? Use that soap, a little bit of the fat in there to kind of help break up the different stains and get the oils from it and break it up to remove it. Same kind of thing with the gallbladder, that as you eat, the gallbladder will squeeze some bile into the small intestine so the food comes in and can help absorb it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's why when people who don't have a gallbladder, when they have the surgery, the doctors usually say, avoid fatty foods, potentially even just take different fat soluble vitamins because you're not going to be able to absorb them as well, et cetera. So when you go and just say hypothetically you don't have a gallbladder, or even more importantly and more interestingly, so many people have a sluggish gallbladder, and that's through stress, through diet, through a whole host of stuff that your gallbladder could be ideally functioning at 100%. Let's say it's functioning at 50. What happens is, when you don't have that gallbladder, have a minimally functioning, you're not able to absorb everything as well. Okay. That's the number one, A, E, D, and K, just for the fat soluble vitamins. And it's not just about vitamin D and bone health and vitamin K, for whatever. There's a whole host of other needs for the B vitamins and different, making sure you absorb your cholesterol well, all these different aspects. So it just adds that other mineral the vitamin deficiencies can happen, and then also a lot of gut stuff. Like as soon as I have some great salmon or some grass-fed steak or just olive oil, I have a great salad with plenty of olive oil and avocado. Man, you already know what the patient starts talking about. It's like I have to go to the bathroom, things like that. So it's really important to have, and if you don't, there's great bile supplementation.
Okay.
But it's just a really good component that as you decide if you want to go down a paleo, keto, and even vegetarian with cheese and egg, whatever it may be, you are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. Just because you swallow it doesn't mean you're getting it. So, any of these kind of, dietary programs, you got to make sure that you're digesting well in the gallbladder. In my professional opinion, is a pretty important component to it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty important. I'm surprised that they say it's not that
you know, it's one of those, and I don't know either. It just, you know, some of them will say, you know, it's you know, archaic. We don't even need it. That's why we can, you know, so don't even worry about it. And I just looking at that physiology is to me, I think is a pretty important, you know, component.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's definitely like important for people to know too, because I feel like probably a lot of people, well, hopefully the doctors tell them what exactly is going on when they remove their gallbladder.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
And obviously, this guy didn't even think to put it on any kind of medical history. So.
And I say, like, I work with a lot of medical doctors. I work with, you know, this is a team, and I love working with other ones. And so if I have a patient who's come in who either has had surgery, I just ask them, what was explained to you? And let me, like, and some of them, they're great. Don't do this, don't do this. You might want to look at supplementation. Other ones, they go, they just said, you know, we'll, you know, come back if you need any help. So it's about that education to say, you know, one, definitely not a guilt of, you know, I can't believe they took out that gall. That's not what this is about, because sometimes it's needed. You have a gallstone that's impacted. You have emergency surgery, it has to happen. And that's where the beauty of medicine comes in. You need those surgeries. But now that you don't have it, it's like, okay, now let's just kind of work from there. And again, looking at bile supplementation that will help support the digestion. So you don't have to feel like, you know, yes, would all of us ideally, you know, have our original hardware, you know, but sometimes you don't, you know, things happen. Yeah. And so we just kind of, you know, make the change accordingly. Yeah,
kind of adjust to what you need to need to do. Yeah, that's interesting. And then so with keto and paleo, what's the difference between keto and paleo?
So I mean, like the biggest like summation, I mean, like ketogenic means exactly that, to burn ketones, to burn fat. And so what happens is you can only technically start off with about 20 grams of carbs. Where do those carbs come from? There's a whole list. I mean, it even gets into certain vegetables you can't have and things like that. You know, and a big argument against a lot of people saying, well, you should do keto is because what about all these different minerals? What about all these different things? And my thought is, well, let's look at labs. You know, I think supplementation with almost any program based on your nutrition, based on your labs, is important. But that's like the core of that. Keto doesn't get into where paleo, I mean, you could, like you were saying, you could be paleo and keto. I mean, you can go further. You can be autoimmune paleo keto, right? You can be autoimmune paleo keto vegan. I mean, you can just kind of go as, you know, for different levels. But again, to go into the ketogenic, that's the main component. You initially get these urine sticks, see if you urinate with some ketones. Only for a small time. And this is the frustrating thing with people get into ketosis. They'll get into ketosis, and then after a while, the body adapts and stops making this urine aspect, but you can still test it through the blood. So people start going, it's like, wait a second, I'm eating 25 grams of carbs, 30 grams. I'm not in ketosis anymore. And they get frustrated. But they are in ketosis. They're not testing accordingly because they need to be tested via blood. And the blood's more expensive. Every prick you do with the blood is like $1 or $1.50.
Right.
Like,
it starts to build up.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, from that standpoint, that's again the summary of ketogenic is to burn fat. Gotcha. Paleo goes into, and again, that's a whole other argument. Like, did the Paleolithic people ever really eat this kind of way? And, you know, was there paleo muffins, right? You know? But it's the biochemical components to say, you know, did we really eat a lot of grain? Did we eat a lot of dairy? Did we eat a lot of these different things? And without going into a whole other discussion about whether that is or isn't, you get into the whole paleo aspect. And what the paleo aspect is removing a lot of those different foods, like dairy, like grains, you know, root vegetables are great. You know, lard and tallow and all these other great fats are fine for you. Plenty of proteins are fine, but it's not necessarily that you have to be in ketosis, right? So you can have plenty of sweet potatoes, you know, nuts, seeds, you know, all these kind of components that while might throw you out of ketosis, you know, are still going to be paleo. So that's kind of a difference. And again, for keto, for people again, looking at the definitions, You can have, cheese. That's going to be totally fine. So that's where it gets into the goal for keto is ketogenic, burn ketones. The goal for paleo is different food elimination to eat as much as Paleolithic as possible. And really by default, both of these can be really beneficial to patients, not even from their, so many other contexts. I'd say 90+% of people are getting on these programs to lose weight. I mean, almost always. Other ones, fatigue, fertility, there's some other things. And just by default, it turns into something that a lot of doctors used to do as a food elimination program. Let's just take out a lot of these things for about 30 days and see how you feel. Yeah. Because the wheat isn't the wheat that our ancestors ate. Even the cheeses, even the, and raw grass-fed cheese, there's a lot of health benefits to that. And it's not always the easiest to get. So that's kind of like, if you want to kind of try to break things down into those components, that's what they're kind of, again, more of a higher level, with those diets.
Yeah. And so with keto would you stay in ketosis or in that ketogenic state just constantly, or is there like certain amounts of time? Is it okay to be in ketosis constantly?
So this, great questions. When you get into with the ketosis, I mean, if you think about our bodies have two different pathways, glucose and ketones, and they run pretty well in different ways. As we get into fall and wintertime, there's famine, right? Genetically, we're 10,000 years in the past. So ketones make sense because the body's like, I've got to survive. I need to make sure that I do really well. There's really interesting research on our brains. Some research showing that our brains do better with ketones, right? One huge misinformation that a lot of people get into when they hear ketones is ketoacidosis. And ketoacidosis is a diabetic issue where when you have diabetes, you're actually causing ketoacidosis, which is a damaging of the kidneys, a whole other aspect. And ketosis and ketoacidosis is not the same thing. Okay. So that's kind of a good, like, as people wanting to look into this stuff, you hear it. It's like, the ketones are bad. Or the other big thing with, as you're talking about, can you be in ketosis forever? People say, well, all that protein, can be hard on the kidneys, right? Well, again, ketosis is not a high protein diet. Right. It's a high fat diet. Right. Eating, slabs of pork every day, is not saying, it's not saying yes or no to ketosis, but it's the point of saying it's really more of a fat, veggies, protein. That's kind of like the hierarchy of proteins, proteins, veggies, as far as the pyramid goes. And there's no research that I've read that as far as people who have healthy kidneys, who have healthy, body function, that they're showing that it be any kind of harming to the body by being in long-term ketosis. If somebody comes in that's in I would tell somebody who's in stage 2, stage 3, or any kind of kidney disruption, I'd say let's kind of monitor this. I wouldn't necessarily, I would really make sure that if you're going to go in ketosis, you do have plenty of fats. Don't really go so much towards the higher proteins, but using something like whey that absorbs before you get into the kidneys anyway, right? So that's the thing. So the answer is I haven't read any research as far as I knew a doctor that was in ketosis pretty much constantly for 20 years, and his blood levels, everything was great. So it gets into mainly about sustainability. Yeah. Right? I feel like I'm in ketosis, but if I have one more egg in the morning, I'm going to vomit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's really of starting with that 20 to 30 grams or so. Again, keeping very strict. They usually say under 20 grams. Then what happens is for about 2 or 3 weeks, you start there. And then you really kind of monitor how you feel. If you're feeling great, you need another 20, 30 pounds to lose, then I'd say that's fine. I would definitely start monitoring labs, because as you start changing these diets, you can become electrolyte deficient. There's just some things that you want to monitor. You want to make sure, because you're going to get tons of vitamin C through, say, bell peppers. You're not eating oranges anymore, but you want to look at all these components and say, okay, well, that's how we are. And then you get to a point where say, okay, well, let me I feel good. I'm in ketosis. Let me kind of extend how far I can take my carbs and still be in ketosis. That's a critical carbohydrate level, and everybody's different. It depends on metabolism. It depends on, like me, I have a low one because I burned through my pancreas and all the stuff when I was a chubby kid eating all my carbs. That people have a different level, and so as you're working out or as you're doing stuff, you might have a little bit of a wiggle room. Men tend to get more carbs than women, unfortunately. It's one of those things. Not always, but you kind of look at that, and then you kind of move and say, okay, well, I'm at about 60, and now I'm out of ketosis. Okay, not necessarily bad. Let's monitor it. Let's say, okay, again, I need some sweet potato. I need some variety. Okay, so let's say you're at 20 grams, 30 grams of carbs. Let's go up to 60 or 70. Let's monitor that for a month and see how you do.
Yeah.
If you still are feeling great, you're still losing weight, you're on your health goals, then great. Who cares if you're in ketosis? Who cares if you want to call yourself a ketogenic or paleo or whatever term you want to use? The goal is that you're that you're healthy, and two, if there's one word I could describe as far as nutrition goes, is it should nourish you. Right? It is a fuel. You should feel good after you eat. You shouldn't deprive yourself to health. I mean, that's my own personal, approach. But that's kind of the idea of ketosis and you can. I mean, I have to look at my patients. I've had patients at least 2 years strict keto, like in ketosis, and most of the time the people, like I said, when they want to switch it is they want changes or they want, whatnot. So,
yeah. Yeah, and kind of like the same thing again is just feeling good.
Yep.
Right? That's the main thing. As long as if you're feeling good, of course, some people might argue that they eat fast food every day and they feel great, but I think it's because they don't know what good feels like.
You said it perfectly. It's like what it's like slowly boiling the frog. It's like you don't know what you don't know, and you get that slow feeling. It's like, oh, I feel fine, and then they change it and they go, I didn't realize, I woke up swollen every morning. You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Absolutely. And then so I feel like inflammatory foods are pretty popular as well. What are some examples of like foods that are particularly inflammatory?
So that's another really good question because it could be a huge spectrum for people.
Right. I guess it probably depends on the person a little bit.
It can. It can also depend on if they have an autoimmune. It could be nightshades. It could be nuts. It could be seeds. It could be cilantro. It could be, I'm going far down that one path. Initially, we already know processed foods, Kit Kats, donuts, Twinkies, all those things. But non-organic, even meats can be more pro-inflammatory because of the grains, right? You have obviously different grains could potentially be more inflammatory. The biggest thing is a lot of the processed foods. That's the one thing. The other pro-inflammatory, the omega, the 6s that you get from different, arachidonic acid from different meats. It's why eating organic as much as possible, is important. As humans, we're more acid producing anyway. So like everybody's can be slightly also obsessed with pH, looking at that kind of stuff. And we just naturally are burn more of an acid, more metabolic acidosis. So it's why you hear so much about all the anti-inflammatory, foods, and that's going, the nuts and the seeds and the fish and those kind of things. But from the aspect of the pro-inflammatories, again, the processed foods, the sugars. I mean, sugar is very pro-inflammatory.
Right.
Those things. And so then if people want to follow that more of that inflammatory, diet and a lot of fish, it's wonderful. Again, if they don't get to that point of, wait a second, I don't feel like I should be when everybody's telling me I'm eating this stuff. And that's where labs come in. When you look at some inflammatory labs, again, if it's something like have rheumatoid arthritis or Sjogren's or, whatever it may be as far as the autoimmune, you might want to go like an AIP, an autoimmune paleo diet, where you take out several things. It feels really limited until you do. You look at all the other ones that you look at. And from a cost-effective standpoint, to monitor how you feel. Yeah. Right? You can get into these labs, and I think some of these labs are wonderful. I just don't necessarily think that you have to right at the very beginning, spend $2,500 on some stuff. But yeah, though that's kind of the initial rule for anti-inflammatory diet stuff.
Yeah. Because one thing that I think is kind of interesting, and it was something I tried myself, but there's been a lot of things with a lot of pro athletes have been coming out talking about kind of switching to more plant-based diets, and they've talked about it helping with like a lot of inflammatory issues in their knees and their ankles. And I tried it because I used to be a soccer player.
Oh, nice.
And I had really bad tendinitis in my patellar tendon on my knee. And so I kind of switched over to more of a vegetarian type, and I cut out dairy. I wasn't like full vegan. I would have cheese here and there or whatever, but I cut out a lot of animal products.
Gotcha.
And I did that for about 2 years, and I did like feel a lot of really good benefits in that aspect. And now since then, I've kind of gone more into like I just kind of do more of a balance. Like I kind of lower my animal product. Like I don't have a ton of meat and dairy every day, but I'll have it like here and there, and I have like eggs and stuff like that. But I was just kind of curious, like, is there anything happening there? Like, why would that necessarily help with those kind of issues?
It's kind of it's also a default too that as you take out, because so many people aren't eating like grass-fed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's no way I was eating that in college.
And so, exactly. And so by default, I think it's kind of like, are you feeling better because you took out a lot of the non-organic proteins or added the plant-based? I think it's a combination of both. No one's going to argue, including myself, with a lot of the, from hemp protein to, even pea protein. I think there's a lot of health benefits to it. Some people with peas and those things, might not deal with it. It could be pro-inflammatory. But again, aside from that fact, it's because you're adding a ton of more micronutrients to your body. You're taking out a lot of those other pro-inflammatory foods. So you're adding a lot of, anti-inflammatory foods and taking away a lot of those. And so as I tell patients, and I have, a lot of vegan and vegetarian patients too, it's like, when you do stuff like this, you've got to monitor, everything. Vegan, there's not really a society in our culture, in our genetics that have ever really truly been vegan society. But I'm not going to sit here and argue about different things because everybody's different. So okay, if this is how you want to do it, then great. Let's monitor things and see how you are. And so with the plant-based aspects, you just got to eat a lot more plants. Right. So you got to really make sure you're getting all the different amino acids, you're getting all those different components to it. But that's why he says you're really flooding yourself with a lot of stuff that you probably weren't getting. Again, you're in college, not eating those kind of things, and you're getting a lot of really great. from the spirulinas to the, to just a whole host of different foods that are out there that vegans you can do wrong too. And so many times you get into more carbohydrates and a lot of rice and a lot of those things. So it's like, wait. What about the plants? What about all those kind of things? And so absolutely. By doing that, you can help lower the inflammation that way. Yeah, for sure. That's cool because I was interested in how that works because it has kind of become popular. And so with the vegans, what are some things that they need to be particularly careful of in terms of having dietary deficits? Because I feel like all of the, like, when kind of like we were talking about when you go into these strict diets, every one of them, it's like you need to watch, in particular, might want to watch this or that. So what would it be for vegans? Because they take a lot of stuff out of their diet. Yeah, it's just something where especially from minerals, especially from bone mineral aspects, that's where if I have a patient who, again, it's like, for various reasons, it's religious, it's and I understand like how animals are the cattle mills and stuff. I agree. I don't think it should be that way at all. I think, we should be able to respect our animals. And so without getting into all the aspects of that if that's that route that you want to go to, it's to me, it's really imperative there's a company called SpectraCell that does a really good, like 200 or so micronutrients to kind of test. Stuff like spirulina, right? It has you'll say, I'm going to take spirulina because of the B12. It's an analog of B12. So it's going to show up on blood as a B12, but it's not.
Oh,
and so things like homocysteine, which is for B12 and folate needs, I would say let's monitor this. For vegans, oftentimes it's a switch where you get plenty of omega-3s and not enough omega-6s.
Oh,
you get the borage oils, you get the different oils that are more the omega-6s, or even flaxseed. But flaxseed, about 30% of people don't have the enzyme that will break down flaxseed into omega-3s too.
Oh, really?
So getting a fatty acid analysis, there's a company called Lipid Lab that's a finger prick test that I recommend, and LabCorp has them too. So it's just a matter of, look, again, Dr. Latin for teacher, I'm just trying to educate and do everything I can, right? This is what I'm saying as far as what our genetics show, but if you're going, I really want to stay this route, okay, let's monitor and let's see everything that's going on. And it's from a micronutrient. Choline is another one. Choline is needed for a lot of prevention of fatty liver and other different health components. Acetylcholine, which is for neurotransmitters. And there's a lot of choline in different animal products, right? So it's things like that, okay, well, you might need to take some of those, different things. So it's really, there's a broad spectrum of a lot of different nutrients, especially from the amino acids. You want to make sure that, all the essential amino acids that you're getting, and also the fats. Your brain is made up of basically fat, water, and cholesterol, and 70% of your fat in your brain is DHA. And the best source of that is going to be through fish oils. Doesn't mean it has to be only way, but it's stuff where if you're going to go this way, we just really got to make sure that you're getting all those details.
Yeah, you have to just be extra aware.
Yeah, one of my mentors, he's taught. He's in his, I think he's pushing 80 now. He's in practice for 60 something years. He's a vegetarian, and he said he was a Mr. Bodybuilder way back in the 60s and stuff. And he goes, "You can do it. You just got to be really smart.
Yeah,
you got to be really. It's like any of them really. I mean, you gotta do it. It's just a little bit more with vegetarian and vegan, and the convenience is killing us. Right? I can just go and just buy it here. But it's like, look, let's know where our food comes from. And so from that aspect, just to really look at all those different tests.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I think that hopefully people are starting to shift more to, is being more aware of where their food's coming from and how their food is prepared, and what, especially if you're eating animal products, how are the animals brought up, what was their, all of that kind of stuff, which is definitely important. I went to school up in just outside of Amarillo.
Oh, okay.
And so up there, it's I think might be the cattle capital of the south of the southern region of the U.S. And so when you go out there, you see the cattle farms, and it's crazy the number of cattle. There'll be 60,000 head of cattle all just kind of crammed up, and it's crazy.
And, that gets into a lot of other, not just philosophical, but even what I said, you are what you eat, or you're not what you eat, you are what you absorb. Well, imagine when those cows or chickens or whatever are under a lot of stress. Yeah. They're producing a lot of cortisol. They're pro-inflammatory, right? And so just by that default, I love, there's such a much bigger movement right now with more smaller farmers, the farmers markets, especially here in Austin. So, knowing your farmer like your doctor, it's imperative. It's so important. Like you said, to know where your food's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even just necessarily animal products, because you think about where you get your vegetables, everything from, knowing what is being sprayed on, what kind of soil is being used, all those are also, extremely important things to be aware of.
Yep, absolutely.
That's one thing I haven't done it yet, but I really want to kind of get my own garden going so that I can, make my own type foods. And then you can also kind of eat more seasonally, because I've heard a lot of good things about trying to eat more seasonally appropriate.
You're hitting so many good things, because, we don't eat seasonally. I mean, we have watermelon in the wintertime. Yeah. That for people, even with you, as anybody who wants to kind of start a little bit of a garden, do an herb garden in your house. Do small stuff. Get a plant with some tomatoes. You can start slowly. You don't have to convert your whole backyard into a garden. I mean, because it can get to be overwhelming. But you're absolutely right, because when you start to learn, oh wow, these foods aren't going to grow right now. I think even genetically our bodies is why are certain things grown at certain times? That's what our body's going to need anyway, right? So I couldn't agree more with that.
And another thing, I don't know if there's any backing or like proof of this, but something that I feel like is possible is with when people eat, let's say they eat the same things over a long period of time, they don't really have a lot of diversity in their food. Is there any kind of effect on the body in terms of it getting almost used to that nutrient? Like, is it important to switch things up?
Yes,
because that could be another thing, eating seasonally as well. Because when you eat seasonally, you're going to go from eating, you'll eat a certain type of food for 3 months, 4 months, whatever, and then once that is not available, you're going to switch up. You're still getting a lot of the same nutrients, but you're getting them from different sources. So I feel like that must have kind of some kind of impact on the body.
Absolutely, and not only from the standpoint of there's research on as you eat the same thing over and over again, you can get sensitive to it. Like eggs. Eggs are wonderful and, pasture raised or, whatnot, free range. But if you eat them over and over, or like every day, I have 2 to 3 eggs every morning. A lot of times people end up getting sensitive to it. And so just like we're told to eat the color of the rainbow, right, of all the foods, same thing with different fats, same thing with, different fruits, different vegetables, whatever it may be, because we only know a certain component of what our food really is. Like if you look at something like a beet, beets are without sounding too cliche with being in this field, really a superfood. I mean, with all what it does for detox and lymphatics and everything else. But when you look at like what's called a breakdown, like a spectrophotometry of all the different nutrients, that you'll see certain nutrients of vitamin C, whatever, and you see all these different colors. And at the very end of all these different graphs are all these little other lines. It's like, we don't know what it is. We haven't labeled it yet. So what is that doing for our body? It's infinitely benefiting us, and we don't know. And that's where it gets into, supplementation, and stuff where it's like, I'm going to take a, crap load of, vitamin C, which is only ascorbic acid by the FDA rules. Well, what about the whole vitamin C complex that you're getting from an orange or a bell pepper and something like that? So when you look at that from the standpoint of food rotation, you're absolutely right that I think, and this really is only my just thinking out loud with this, that I think it all with this crop rotation, everything is exactly that. You have this whole season of asparagus or, artichokes or whatever, and then that goes away and you have something else, and it's going to complement everything because that's our bodies already understand and know that we're not going to get certain foods every day. We already know that. So it's almost, I think, preparing itself to say, okay, well, this is why I need this or that. It's also why with the wintertime, people tend to gain weight during the wintertime. One, our body's getting into famine. So it's like, I need to prepare. Yeah. And where are all of our holidays? Yeah. Right in the middle of the worst possible time. Yep. And so you're eating all these other foods. And so next thing you know, you gain 15 pounds just in a few weeks. Because that's, again, like you were saying with that, this food rotation, it all works together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really going like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's.
Yeah, you're miserable after that. Yeah.
Yeah, your body's getting hit pretty hard there. But then everyone goes to the gym starting in January.
Right, for January 2nd through the 8th. No.
Yeah, that's the best time for all the gym owners. Are like huge surge, everyone's coming in. But yeah, and so with all the different diets and everything, there's also kind of a component of that's become popular with the fasting stuff. What do you think about the fasting?
So I do like it a lot from the standpoint going back into genetics. Now, I always have to preface it. If you got somebody who's under a lot of stress, their adrenals are gone, I'm not necessarily that you need to go to an 8 or 6 hour window of eating, right? Because that could do a little bit too much stress on the adrenals or whatnot. So with that being said, I like the aspect of intermittent fasting, mainly because it goes into genetics. We didn't wake up as our ancestors wake up and just go to a Starbucks, right? They had to go hunt, or they had to prepare. They had to do all these things. So by definition, they were fasting, right? There was a certain time. Now again, you go into arguments where then there was a feast, right? Because there was times you just had to eat because you didn't know when you were going to eat again. Right, and they had prolonged fasting. So again, we're trying to play with genetics in this way to say, okay, well, we weren't always eating all the time, so let's kind of play with that. And I've seen there's just a lot of great research on it. There's even the ones that do like a 5 day where it gets into actually as you start fasting longer and longer, the body says, well, I have to start surviving, not to the point where you're messing up your metabolism. That's the big thing, right? I can't fast because I need 3 meals a day because I'll gain weight because my metabolism slows down. But these windows, they won't do that. But even after that 5-day, that's when your body starts to say, well, I need to survive on something. So it goes after the weaker cells.
Yeah.
So it's called autophagy. So it's actually, so it's a really cool thing. But just from an intermittent fasting, again, I think there's a lot of benefit to it. There's actually a lot of benefit of fasting workouts.
Yeah.
It's also like a thing people are like, wait. And when I was reading about this is 6-7 years ago when I started playing on it. I was like, that's everything that I've been taught is wrong, you know. But I started reading, like, this is more interesting. Even to the point I've had some patients doing fasting post-workout fasts because, you know, as hunters, we didn't always win.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what do we do? And so there's just, we start to be able, what makes the intermittent fasting fun is you start to be able to challenge your body in ways that it doesn't even have to anymore. I mean, we're in this, it's 100 plus degrees outside pretty soon. We're in this.
Yeah.
Our bodies, we have no clue what's going on as far as how our body should actually adapt to those kind of things. So as you know, modern people, if we can start honing in on those things, I think it just helps. I think it helps with longevity. I think it helps with tissue repair. I think it helps with a lot of stuff. So while I'm not going to say everybody has to do it, that's not what I mean. But it's definitely something to consider. And then men and women are different. And that's a whole other discussion where there's some really good articles about fasting for women and with cycles and hormones. It's a little bit trickier, but it's worth, if somebody's looking into it of any aspect, just of saying, I just want to see what it does. I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I started doing intermittent fasting maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago. And yeah, I've really liked it. And I do my workout. I'll usually do a morning workout and I'll fast. And obviously I don't eat before I work out, and then I'll still not eat for a good 3 or 4 hours after the workout. And yeah, a lot of the research is super, super interesting, and it does make a lot of sense. And they even talk about, you know, increased production of, I think, your human growth hormone.
Yep,
while
exactly.
You're fasting.
That's the big one. Yep.
So a lot of like the bodybuilder dudes have even started talking about it, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, it's just fascinating because like I played soccer my whole life, so I played in a club, and then I played in college, and I played after college as well. And yeah, back playing, you would never, I would never think about,
carb load,
exactly. Yeah. Carbo loading. It would be, you know, you'd have your chocolate milk or protein shake like right after you work out. And it was like, if you don't do this, you're going to mess up your body up. You're not going to repair properly. So it's just so fascinating to see all this research come out that says the opposite. Yep. Which is amazing.
And it's interesting. It's good you bring up with the athletic stuff too, in case anybody who's listening. And one, you might already be doing it, but even like a fast workout, post-workout fast, you can actually even do some branched chain amino acids. Yeah, it'll still keep you fasting, but have some tissue repair. So it's a little trick,
kind of like a little trick.
Yeah. So like, there's some really great Zymogen and Designs for Health have some really good products out there for them. But they, the other aspect, they did I think it was the LA Lakers that I heard like several years, like we're trying to do some more intermittent fasting, and they didn't do as well because you need a little bit of explosion with that. So that's what I tell patients, like if you're doing workouts, by all means, you're not competing for something, it's your job, play around with it. But if you start feeling like I'm going to do this, really intense, CrossFit, workout, something like that. If you want to have a little bit of just a little bit of a glucose or something right before to kind of see, that's where you kind of play around with it. But the research is really fun to kind of see, it's flipping everything around, which is fun. Yeah,
it's really cool. Yeah, so like you think for those like people looking to do those really intense workouts, probably like some fruit or maybe
possibly. I mean, like I said, it depends. Like if you're doing longer, like a Spartan race, things like that, because it's a longer, slower. People like Ben Greenfield and those, they'll be fasting before. They'll just do some, some butter coffee or bulletproof coffee beforehand. That's about it. And so you can still get away with it. Right. You can play around with initially having maybe just a little bit of fat beforehand. So it'll give you some fuel, but you're still in a there's arguments about that. Like, oh no, as soon as you put anything in your body, you're not
Right.
fasting. But again, when you get into athletics, you'll kind of play around with it. You can still do, first thing in the morning, or even whenever you work out, keep with a pure fast, even doing it when you're doing higher intensity. But if you start feeling like what you don't want is injuries, or feel like I'm getting lightheaded, okay, let's kind of change around. Yeah, maybe like a piece of fruit, maybe like again, even initially some branched chain amino acids, even though it's not going to change the blood sugar a lot, it's just going to give you something to kind of work with. A spoonful of coconut oil, which nobody wants to do like that anymore. But it's things to kind of play with, to kind of see if you're like, God, my gains are just not with these kind of workouts. It's something to just kind of play with.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also going further on what you were kind of talking about before with our, being in this AC and all that. Another thing I feel like a lot of people are doing is, sauna and stuff like that, which I think is kind of cool too. And it kind of plays off the same thing where now our bodies don't experience any real change in climate.
Extremes, yeah, both from the sauna and cryotherapy. I think both of those, which I'm the biggest weenie when it comes to cold.
Yeah.
So I don't care what the research says on cryotherapy. I'm not doing it. I can't. But there's research. So, you even look at the Scandinavians and why would they go into the sauna and then do it really cold? I mean,
they'll go do the ice plunges.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And it's so many times you hear stuff like this or cod liver oil and all these kind of things that have been done for so long. It wasn't done just because it was trendy. There was benefits to it that they might not even really realize, hundreds of thousands of years ago, but they understood, okay, my grandparents did this and they are really healthy. I want to do the kind of same thing.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Yeah, and I remember, do you ever go to like Barton Springs or anything?
No, it's
not
too
even
cold.
too cold.
No way. No, I've done it like once in my life. I ain't gonna do it again. No. Even my son wants to go. Like, you can go with your mom. I'll watch.
I'll watch.
So,
yeah, at least it's a nice place to hang out.
oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'll just look at it from a distance.
Yeah, because even that water, it's not. It's pretty cold. It's like 60 degrees or something.
God, me, it's painful. But
Yeah.
Anyway,
but
there again, lots of benefit to it, and and people can do those kind of things. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. I used to love doing ice baths. Ice baths were like my favorite thing.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I feel like I wouldn't like them as much anymore. Once you start doing them,
Gotcha.
the first one is terrible, and then the second one is still terrible because you're like dreading it.
I gotcha.
Yeah, but after you get into the
get used to
rhythm,
it.
then it's just kind of.
Yeah, you're still not selling me, but
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's brutal. What's really rough is if you go to the waist, it sucks. But if you go below, like if you put your heart and lungs
Interesting. Okay.
Because your lungs really contract and you just can't breathe. You're like,
wow, interesting. Okay.
You feel that one even worse for sure.
Gotcha.
That's if people are going up to the neck, they're hardcore.
I got you. Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on today, man. It was really good to talk to you,
Good.
and obviously, I think a lot of the information you got to share today was super interesting, and hopefully, people will
Hope it helps somebody who's out there that'll open their eyes or just help. I mean, that's what I want to do. So.
Yeah, just give people a little bit more of an understanding of all these different diets and why, maybe they all have something good to offer and why you can kind of maybe do blends and just focus on how you're feeling. Really,
Absolutely.
Is there any way for people to contact you or look you up to see if there's anything more?
My website, it's drscottjurica, JURICA.com is my website. My phone number, 512-249-9702. So by all means, Google my name, you should be able to find all my website information as well for that.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Dr. Scott. And then, we'll have to get you back on here soon.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
we're the only country in the world that separates the mind from the body. Yeah. The only country.
I'm joined today by Athena, Jezik, Ed Norden,
Robert Gardner,
Dr. Paula Bruno.
The body has a natural ability and tendency to want to heal.
It doesn't have to be complicated or costly.
I can talk science. Yeah, we'll talk science for sure.
You do often need to supplement with magnesium.
Unbalanced life.
Vitally important to make sure that the entire system is opened up.
Actually, happiness and suffering are states of mind. They're not external things.
Do you have any recommendations for our listeners?
Use a tennis ball.
Vinyasa or hatha yoga.
Try a HIIT workout. You only got to do 20 minutes.
Every day, having a practice for yourself.
We're not powerless,
right,
to improve our situation.